What if you?
Go.
We'll call to order the May 3rd Planning Commission meeting. Please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Perkovic.
Here.
Mr. Sidoti.
Here.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Here.
Mr. Varga.
Here.
Mr. Cicero.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
And Mr. Snow is absent.
Mr. Snow is excused. Okay. Before we approve the April 12th minutes, we have a little housekeeping that we need to take care of. If you recall, under new business, the commission approved a minor subdivision for the Highsley Point project. It was the splitting of one large parcel into two parcels, and it was subject to three conditions. It's the second condition that read, the proposed reciprocal easement agreement shall be made between separate ownerships. Well, at the time, there was an agreement, a proposed draft agreement between the parties, and we want to modify that condition so it properly reflects what occurred back at that meeting. And so I'm going to ask for a motion to rescind condition number 2 under the Highsley Point project and substitute a motion similar to read, the proposed reciprocal easement agreement shall conform with the approved draft agreement presented to the Metro Law Department, and that said agreement to find final approval shall be filed concurrently with the plat of lot split. Mr. Zeman, is that okay?
Perfect. And again, our apologies. There was so much discussion of the changes from the original submission to the day of the hearing that condition number 2 got caught in the mix, and apologize for that.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion
Well,
to rescind and modify?
Yeah, I guess let's have, I'm making a motion to rescind and modify the number 2 issue.
As I read?
As you read it, yes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Varga.
Yes?
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion now to approve the minutes of April 12th.
So moved.
Second?
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Okay, before we begin, I just want to announce that items 6 and 7 under old business will remain on the table. They will not be heard tonight. And I point that out that if there's anyone here specifically for those items, they will not be heard. Hopefully, they'll be on the May 24th meeting. All right, we have 5 public hearings on the agenda tonight. How we handle our public hearings is I'll read the item, ask the applicant to come to the podium, state their name clearly, and give us an overview of the project. Once that occurs, I'll ask for any proponents, those who approve and are in favor of the project, just come to the podium, state your name clearly for the clerk, and then provide us with your overview. Then I will ask for any opponents, those who are opposed to the project. You can come to the podium, state your name, your address, and give us your views as to why you oppose this project. And then there's always somebody in the audience who may have a question or two, not necessarily against or in favor of the project, but if there's anyone here who just wants to ask a question, then we'll provide you with time to do that also. Then we'll close the hearing, and then we'll have a discussion with the commission members and the applicant. With that said, the first item is a conditional use permit to allow an automobile repair shop at 7471 Tyler Boulevard, Unit G, in the M1 Light Manufacturing District. Is that applicant here? Please come to the podium.
Richard Skotniski, owner of S&S Auto
Wait,
Care.
is there a microphone? Okay, go ahead. Speak a little louder.
Richard Skotniski at S&S Auto Care on Tyler Boulevard. I'm moving my location across the street to 7471. I got the conditional use permit 3 years ago from you, and my lease was terminated, and I had to find a new location to move into, so that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Are there any proponents who would like to speak in favor or advocate for this project? None? Are there any opponents in the audience who are against this project? Okay, anyone would like to come up and just ask the applicant a question for clarification purposes? All right, with that, the public hearing is closed. Any questions or statements from the administration?
Nothing, sir.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, you can have questions for the applicant and/or the administration.
Mr. Chairman, usually, this is just a standard question we always ask. You're not going to have any vehicles outside?
No, sir.
You're not going to work on them outside?
Sir,
You're not
the
going to
same as
store
what
them
I've had in
outside?
my other conditions.
Same condition as you had at your other place?
Yep.
Just like to say that for the
Will
record.
be the same way.
Okay, when I visited the property, I have to state that your front of the property, your main entrance into your office, into your business, it looked very nice. The parking was good, landscaping, everything was perfect. And I had to read the report because if you would require a customer to deliver their car to the rear of your building, that rear parking area or drive area is terrible. And I would have second thoughts with all the chuck holes I had to dodge, just checking that out. Is the property manager here tonight? Yes. Can you,
Actually, the property owner.
you're the property owner?
Yeah.
Would you step to the mic and identify yourself, please?
Scott Andrews?
Okay. Is there any, I remember asking this once before, I think when a boat repair group wanted to open up in there. Are you going to do anything to that rear lot?
Yes, we just recently acquired this property about a little over a year ago, and we replaced the east side parking lot last summer, and our intention is to continue to replace the west side either this summer or shortly thereafter.
All right, that's good news. Thank you very much. Let's see. All right, are there any other questions, commission members? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
This is a motion to approve with the 6 conditions that the city has.
Second.
Thank you. Before I take a vote, you read the report and you read all the conditions and,
Yeah, as far as the oil trap, I don't understand what that is.
Okay, well,
Auto?
say the oil trap?
And then the handicap parking, there is going to be handicap access to the rear of the building.
Okay, how many spaces are you proposing for the
There's going to be
handicap?
one huge van access for the rear of it. And as far as the ventilation, I've been using for over 40 years a portable unit I put up to, hooked up to the car, and it goes right outside of the garage. So there's no spraying or nothing like that inside the,
Ms. Mitchell, does that conform to our code?
Well, that'll be reviewed at the time of the building permit being issued.
Okay.
So that's just a comment made through the building department
Okay.
to be accepted and reviewed at the time of the building permit submittal.
And I imagine the oil trap, I mean, your oil,
I use a
obviously,
biodegradable oil substance that is picked up in a 55-gallon drum, and it's environmentally safe, and they dispose of it.
as long as it meets EPA requirements,
Does, yeah.
then you're okay. If not, then we got a
Oh,
problem.
it definitely does.
Okay. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Doty?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next public hearing, item number 2, a conditional use permit to allow an automobile motorcycle repair shop at 8762 East Avenue in an M1 light manufacturing district. Is that applicant here? Please come to the podium, state your name.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Zirkle, applicant.
Okay. Give us overview of the project, please.
I'm looking forward to repurposing existing shop space for a automotive motorcycle repair business. with me and my sons. We're probably 1, possibly 2 employees. Standard business hours.
You said automobile. Will there be any light automobile repair, light truck repair there?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Is that it?
That's it. I have read the staff report, and I intend to comply 100% with all the requirements of the conditional use permit.
Okay. At this time, are there any proponents? Those who are in favor of the project, please step to the podium. Are there any opponents? Those opposed to this motorcycle/light repair automobile shop to open? Anybody have just any questions, any matters of concern? All right, not hearing any, we'll close the public hearing. Does the administration have any comments or questions?
No comments.
All right. Commissioners, any questions or comments of the applicant and/or the administration? None? Was this unit used for motorcycles previously? Because I saw a sign on the building, parking only for motorcycles.
Harley parking only and
On-
Knucklehead's Garage. If we don't fix it, you don't pay.
Yeah, yeah,
It was a private shop prior to this, and it's always been a private shop. I relocated from Thompson.
okay,
Looking to get out of the desk job and kind of get back into the working sector.
okay, good. All right, so, good. The unit north of you, 8760, is that unit vacant?
North of me would be the machine shop, and that is not.
There's a machine shop in there?
Yes, there is.
Okay. All right, hearing no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion with the 2 conditions.
There's 7
Or
conditions.
7, I'm sorry. 7 conditions. Thank you, Jeff.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk?
Perkovic.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
The next item, a conditional use permit to allow animal kennels at 7420 Tyler Boulevard in the M1 Light Manufacturing District by In the Doghouse. I've been in the doghouse a couple of times. Is that applicant?
I've also been in the doghouse.
Good evening, thank you.
Okay, state your name, please.
My name is Whitney Callahan. I own In the Doghouse and ITD Properties. In the Doghouse is a dog and cat daycare, boarding, and pet spa. And we would like to open a second location in Menor.
Okay. At this time, are there any proponents for the project? Those who would like to speak in favor and advocate on her behalf? Do I have any opponents, those who oppose this project at this location? Please come up to the podium. No, right over here, please. Wait till you get to the podium, please, and state, give us your name and your
Yeah.
address, please.
Yes, my name's Gary Sutt. We have a private club right next door at 7430. I guess what I have, first of all, is more questions on the day-to-day operation of this facility. First of all, I am a dog lover, so I want you to know that. And my reason for asking this is during the summertime, we have a lot of outdoor activities, barbecues, and we're outside a lot, like everybody wants to be. My concern would be noise, animals outside, any kennels outside of the facility. I don't see that could happen because of the space behind. I don't see any, especially large dogs, have a place to go. But I guess, first of all, I'd like to understand how the business is going to operate day to day, and if it's going to affect us for our evening hours. During the day, it's not so much an issue, but in the evenings, nice days, we're going to be outside. So that is my main
I understand.
question. So if you would share,
Sure.
I would love to hear that.
So we're a little unique in the fact that we are a socialized facility. So we have large yards inside and some adjacent outdoor yards. The dogs play during the day when they're not in their enclosures, and they're in their enclosures overnight, which are inside, and of course at feeding times and things like that. We are open 7 to 7, Monday through Friday. We also have hours on the weekends from 9 to 11 in the morning and 5 to 7 in the evenings. Dogs would not be kept outside of those hours, and they would be supervised at all times.
Okay, what, your weekend hours?
They're 9 to 11 in the morning and 5 to 7 in the evening. Okay? Now, I currently live in a very close community in Lakewood. Well, I work, I should say our
Okay.
business. There's a KFC intercom to order 50 feet from my outdoor area. I've never had a complaint. We have residential homes adjacent to us, and we could give you references if you like. But we are good neighbors, and, we want to be respectful of your business as well.
Yes. Well, like I said, my only concern would be having an outdoor activity and depending upon, the size of that and, you have animals all night long.
Yeah, well, I don't
So
think
are
at
we going to
night-
be having an outside activity and all of a sudden the dogs are going to go, hey, I don't like these neighbors. So,
Well,
you
does
know what I
it
mean?
smell good? Are you going to have hamburgers or something? I
Well,
would
we-
say
Yeah,
after.
we smoke, we cook out. I mean,
After 7 p.m., the dogs would be inside, every day.
Okay. And is it monitored 24 hours?
We don't live there, and I don't think that's legal in the city of Menor, but there are alarm sensors and webcams.
Okay. I guess my only concern was, is there ever going to be a noise issue? That's all.
Well, they have to adhere to the noise codes of the city of Menor, or there will be a problem that they'll have to resolve if it gets out of hand.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Endo?
You sure can.
You said you have a private club at 7430.
Yes.
What kind of private club? Is this like a social club, or?
Yes.
So what's the name of the club?
Fair Trade Cigar Club?
Fair Trade Cigar Club?
Yes.
And the type of social activities are basically maybe barbecues in the summer and
Yeah, in the summertime, we like to sit out back like we all do.
conversations, smoke cigars?
Have cigars, we sit out back, we might smoke. These dogs are gonna go crazy when you start smoking good meat. But we have smokers out there. We have, it's private, it's quiet. There's probably 20-some members, but
How long have you been there?
4 years.
4 years now?
Yeah, we're concerned with, being a kennel, the dogs are gonna be crying and yapping all the time.
We understand. But they must
I
have,
have 3 dogs myself, but I wouldn't wanna live next to a kennel.
excuse me. Can I have your name for the record, please?
My name is Tim Sobanya, Sobonaya. I'm a Menor resident.
Okay.
And just so that I understand better, you're concerned about the dogs making noise inside the building? Or only if they were outside the building?
Well, I would be more concerned of a constant noise. If I can hear it, it doesn't matter if they're inside or out. I mean, if,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? If I have a group of people there and I hear, we all know, if the dog hears me, they want to say, hey, I need attention. So if we're outside and we're doing our thing, are we going to incite them to be noisy? So it's never going to be a win-win thing. It's never going to stop.
And I looked at the overview of the Google map, and it shows 2 buildings on your property, and you do your stuff in the middle between
the
the 2
front
buildings?
building.
Right. And it looks to me as though the 3 outside locations are at the rear of your building? I understand they're still outside, but they're at the rear of the building, so they don't have direct eye contact, or they can't see you, I think.
Well, I wasn't with understanding of if that's subdivided. It's one big building as I see over there. As I watch it being built, it's one big building.
Right.
So I don't know if it's sectioned.
They show in the proposal that they show the interior development, but the only places they have outdoor activities at the rear of the building,
Okay.
and that's only when supervised and during the hours that you talked about, right?
Yes.
So I don't want to go out on a limb, but it sounds like there may not be an inherent conflict, though the noise statutes have to be maintained.
Okay. I mean, and I don't want bad for the animals either, you know what I mean? Because
Sure.
I don't know if you're a dog owner or not, but if you're outside and your dog's looking at you through the window or hears your voice, it's going,
Well, we're gonna have an 8-foot privacy fence anyway for security of the dogs.
Okay.
They will not be able to see you. So if you'd like to come in
Are
for a
they,
tour, you're welcome
are you,
anytime.
are they going to finish fencing down the side of the building?
Maybe not the entire side, but certainly any enclosures with dogs would have 8-foot wood privacy fencing.
All right.
I have a question for the applicant.
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
all right. I'm going to close the public hearing. We're a little out of order here, but that's okay. Is there anyone else in the audience who's going to want to come up and ask a question? All right, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
We will be good neighbors if we.
I'm not,
We'll
we're,
just always
I just
talk.
want the best for both of
Of
us,
course,
that's all.
of
So
course.
if I
Please
don't-
address the chair. Go ahead.
okay, I have a question to the applicant. You show a relatively attractive front facade of this building. Does that exist in that condition now?
It is the existing condition. Right now, it is a shell with split block facing on all 4 sides, steel construction.
But
Flat.
you're proposing this elevation, or this drawing is what it will look like?
That is what it looks like.
That is what it looks like now? Okay. What about the side that is common with their property? Are there windows on that side too?
I'm sorry. Pardon me, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand.
The side of the building that we don't have an elevation of, that is common, that faces theirs,
Oh.
are there windows in that wall?
There are a few windows, and right now, I believe that there's a wood fence from Fair Trade covering the majority of the front windows. That goes back a few.
It goes back to just past the front of the building. How many feet? 6 foot.
All right, I just want to know if there's windows on that side of the building.
Yes,
that's all.
there are.
Okay, and the only concern that might be is that the windows are they necessary for the activity inside the building?
I would be very hesitant to take away natural daylight from
Okay,
a building.
all right, so the only issue might be down the road, if there is a noise problem or a concern, it might be with those windows, but I don't see that it's an inherent problem.
And we would also be open to exploring the fencing along the property line extension or something like to
Right.
that effect.
Are you the property owner as well?
I will be, yes.
Oh, you're buying it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any more questions? I think she's answered it as best
I
as
just
she
want a good
can.
married chair,
All right.
that's all. I don't want to make any phone calls.
Well, I already have one husband, but
No,
I would like to be
I
good
don't mean
neighbors.
like, I'm fine in that arena. I don't need any more. I can't
I would like to
afford
be a
it.
good neighbor.
Okay,
Okay.
well, let's.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell, I read in the report that we may be real close on parking. Do we have enough parking spaces, or do we need to talk about picking up a few more?
Well, per the requirements of the code, the minimum required is 24, the maximum is 29, and the site plan indicates 21. I do believe that the applicant did contact Larry with some concerns regarding that, so I would ask that the applicant address their current needs based on what the site plan's showing versus what the code's requiring.
Thank you. Could you address the administrator's question?
Of course. So I can relate it to my current building. So let's say I did have 10 employees there all at the same time, and I had a rush of 6 clients that all drove that 16 spaces. And that would be a lot to have a rush of 6 clients at one time. That being said, there is an adjacent lot to our parking lot that we are purchasing as well from CEI. And if additional parking is required, would it be possible to land bank those spaces should our business continue to grow and the need arise?
Ms. Mitchell, can you address that?
Well, the parking spaces can be land banked if you are in agreement with that. The commission approves that.
Okay. You have a purchase agreement with CEI conditioned upon receiving approval from the city, and
So the property is now owned by Mr. Santoli. It was sold to him by CEI, and yes, I have a purchase agreement in the application packet for all 3 parcels.
okay.
Sir.
Any additional questions from the commission? Anybody? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Can I ask one more question?
Would you please come to the podium, please? State your name again, please.
Yes, Gary Sutt. I had a question. If that parcel behind our unit, I can't really make out how that is up there, but the parcel they're talking about possibly adding for extended parking, right? That's behind
Yes.
the property that you got from CEI?
So directly behind, there's two.
Can you
plots.
point on the map?
Okay, so, it's kind of hard for me to. Is this the 7420 number? So this is. the
Here's where
one-
we're at. This is
And
your-
this is you, and there's a trailer here, I think of yours, sir, right here. And this is a vacant lot. It doesn't have a trailer on it now.
Okay, so this,
So your trailer's here. And this
Right.
is a kind of a level field. That's all it is.
right, this is the portion that was CEI's, correct?
Both of these were,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
So if you come by, and this is going to be for more parking?
If I'm required to add 3 additional spaces, that we could land bank that for future needs.
The only thing I would ask, if it's feasible at that point, if this area could be fenced in, because now we're going to be one side, and then the back side of us is going to be parking and activity there. Would that area be fenced in?
Point to that area again, where you want it fenced.
Right here?
The rear line?
Yes, the rear line. We're here.
You have a big trailer there now, sir.
That trailer can be moved.
Okay.
And I'm not property
yours?
owner.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not the
Okay.
property owner. But this is all being cleaned up here as well. This is no longer looks like this.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're actually going to extend here. We had a garden in there before, and, you know, we're quite active outside, especially, you know, obviously in the summertime. My only thought would be if this was fenced in, it used to be fenced, the owner of the property, for some reason, after they did the measurement of the property, found that this fence that was existing was on the line or on his property. So I talked to the landlord or the owner of the property, had him tear that down and put up a nice fence here. But if this could be fenced here, I think that would be better.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant.
Go ahead, Mr. Varga.
Do you have plans for these 2 parcels in the back?
Well,
You don't have to, you don't have to get involved with it, but is there plans to be developed at a later date?
not necessarily for, well, it's under CEI power lines, so it is restricted. The parking lot extends far into the one directly behind the building. It's not really shown on that Google.
But the purpose of my asking is that if you ever have to do any development back there, you'll have to come back in front of us.
I
And
mean-
we could require this back, if she's not gonna do anything back there, I wouldn't wanna make her have to build a fence between that
No,
and
no.
nothing. So what I'm saying is if she ever develops anything back there, she'll have to come back and we can consider a fence at that time
Right,
as a
that's
requirement.
what I was saying. If that is going to be, if the business is going to grow like that, I would.
Right now, it's not.
Okay. But we have something to discuss at that point. when-
Right, yes.
All right,
Thank you.
I think.
All right, commission members, do I have a motion?
Let's see, how many? Hold on. 4. I make a motion to accept the project with the 6 conditions,
You want to add the 7th?
The 7th for the land bank. Jeff?
and
Yeah, that would be
7th for the land bank, if it's so required.
The land bank, the appropriate parcels needed to achieve code compliance for parking.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you could just make an amendment to item 1.
Okay, so then it's just 6. And item 1 will be adjusted to reflect the land bank
Okay,
opportunity.
item number 1. 'cause there's 6 places.
So that's the motion.
All right. Madam Clerk, would
Need
you?
a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good luck. Item number 4, conditional use permit to allow vehicle sales and servicing at 7,000 Fracci Court by Jim Brown Incorporated and Osborne Richard M. Trustee. I see the applicants are here. Mr. Brown, welcome.
Kurt Hansen, Tally CM.
Jim Brown, Classic Automotive Group.
First thing I want to say is, since we made the application, Classic does now own that building. Is out of Osborne's name completely, and it is in Classic's name at this time. Classic has total ownership of that facility. A brief overview of what we're proposing. Obviously, we came before and have approvals to renovate the existing Mazda building over here. And what our plan is to, during construction, is to utilize a portion of the old bank building and the lot area to basically move the sales, service right up, the customer lounge, the service writers, and also new car delivery over to that building during the time. This so we're not using the main dealership, seeing how it's extensive renovation of the building. We want to keep everybody away from the building, have a better customer flow and not to be around all the noise. There will be, service will remain over at the existing store.
At the existing door on the facility?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there'll be no servicing of cars taking place on the old bank property.
What about the $64 million question? What's going to happen to the propane tank?
Propane tank's already been removed by the previous owner.
Oh,
That was
great.
removed, was that 2 weeks ago, I think it was removed, so it is completely off-site.
Okay. All right, hold on a second. Are there anybody in the audience who's in favor of the project and would like to advocate on behalf of Classic? Please come to the podium. All right, are there any opponents who are against this expansion at Classic? Would you like to come to the podium at this time? All right, anybody with a question or two for just some issues or information? Okay, hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Are there any comments from the administration?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. You say the GLB building, the Great Lakes Bank building. What about that, the Ohio Rural Natural Gas building that's right next to, is that involved in this?
Yeah, that was kind of a addition that was put onto the old bank building.
Oh, okay, so the bank building and that building, it's all part of it?
That's correct.
Okay. When inspecting the property last week, and that tank was still there, so it must have just happened. But that parking lot, I imagine you're going to do something to at least make it drivable, because there's a lot of charcoals in that parking lot.
We plan to blacktop and put lights. And
Good.
make it look presentable.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the commissioners to the applicant or the administration?
Mr. Chairman, everything you're asking here is temporary, right? So when the new facility opens up, you will not have any sales or service activities or storage activities on this property?
Right.
And you'll propose something different at a later date as to what you're going to do with the property? Okay, so I just want to make it clear for everyone that this is just a temporary approval, and that after you start the new facility up, this will go back to neutral situation.
Yes.
Okay.
And you expect the proposed project timeline, what?
December 1st,
Oh.
January 1st.
That's pretty quick. Okay. All right. If no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 4.
I'll motion for approval with the 3 conditions.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, our last public hearing item is the rezoning of 1.026 acres from RV Village Green District to R4 Single Family Residential District at 9168 Jackson Street. Is that applicant, Mr. Summers? Welcome.
Summers from Summers Real Estate Group. Quick history on this project. This map that's shown right now was basically, there were 3 parcels that comprised of this. It was rezoned by this commission and approved by council to RBG. Subsequent to those approvals and preparing for the subdivision, and based on feedback from the commission of the 2 homes that were on the northeast corner on the Davis property, one, we did a hydrology study that was requested by the city, and it became apparent that, or not apparent, that this area is in a regulated floodplain. So those 2 homes couldn't go there. So we're not going to make this parcel part of the project, so the administration is asking that this be rezoned to R4 so it's not to an orphan parcel. So it will not be included in the plan that we're going to look at later.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Are there anyone here who's in favor of this project and would like to advocate on its behalf? Sir, are you leaving or are you coming up to the podium?
I am waiting to ask questions.
Oh, okay. All right, hold on. Are there any opponents, anyone here who opposes this request? Okay, sir, you come to the podium. Please state your name, spell your last name for the clerk, and give us your address.
What's the podium right here?
Yes, that podium right there.
My name is Alan Meadows. I live across the street from what they propose to do. And
Your address, please.
9159 Jackson Street.
9159. All right, go ahead.
We were wondering, first of all, how many actual homes are going to be put on there?
Well, we're going to address that shortly, once we address this rezoning request.
Okay.
So stick around, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
Go ahead. You have any other questions?
Well, the rezoning of 1.25 acres, that would be the Davis home. Are you taking that and building something behind it, or are you expanding that current home, or?
Actually, to the contrary, we are removing the Davis property from this project. So you'll see in the next presentation that,
Sorry.
if I may.
Go ahead,
This
Mr.
is,
Summers.
this is, bear with me, I wasn't prepared. This is the new proposed project, and you will see that the Davis parcel is not part of this project at all.
Okay.
And we're going to address this in the next
Next
That won't be
session.
part of this public hearing. All we're doing at this public hearing is withdrawing the Davis property and asking you to be rezoned to what it originally was.
Okay. So I was just wondering, because there is a man over there working on it, fixing it up.
All right, sir. Mr. Meadow?
Yes.
All right, why don't we hold off on that? Because we can get into that discussion shortly. Let's move forward on this rezoning request.
All right. That's all.
Mr. Zeman, as part of it for information, what's required if we approve this going back to R4? Does this have to go to the voters?
No, it can go back, it goes back to council.
Okay.
It's not a mandatory referendum item.
Okay, thank you. All right, commission members, any other questions for the administration or the applicant?
I understand the zoning going back to what it was before. Is this subject to a plan? Or a proposal of some type on the future R4 property?
No, the owner now intends to rehabilitate the property.
Okay, I'm just trying to see if this rezoning again is contingent upon some other plan.
Not at all.
Okay.
It will not be any part of this project that we're going to discuss next.
Any other questions, commission members? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion at this time. And we're just voting on the rezoning, item number 5.
I'll make a motion to approve the submission with the one condition.
Have a second.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, that's the end of our public hearings. Under old business, item number 6, the Lowe's Home Improvement Outdoor Expansion is remaining on the table, And we have a correspondence from them that they'll be at the May 24th meeting.
Sure.
Ms. Mitchell? Okay, may I ask that if you do hear from Lowe's between now and the 24th, and there's any indication that they would be looking for another extension, that I would request that we insist that at least one representative comes to the meeting on the 24th, so we can hear what their plans are for this outdoor storage that is in clear violation of our Mentor codes.
Mr. Chairman, I will let you know that we did receive an email correspondence from them just yesterday indicating that they will not be moving forward with their plan to extend the wall of the outdoor storage area. They plan to remove all of the merchandise from the outdoor storage area. The staff intends to get back in touch with him to indicate that it does absolutely have to be removed. But that was the latest correspondence we had received.
Any indication from them on where all that inventory is going to be moved to?
Some of it would be moved inside, but they anticipate they would also remove some of them completely off-site, but they also anticipate a lot of it being sold within a very short time frame. So again, we haven't had a chance to reach back out to them, but that was what we had just received.
Commission members, any concerns or questions?
Well, Mr. Chairman? My only concern is that this problem exists at the same time every year. And it appears that they will have kind of gotten through this period not conforming to the requirements of the city. I just want to make sure the city is being firm enough in requiring them to solve this problem in a timely manner. Because in another month or two, that problem naturally goes away, and then we may not see a solution, and then we have the same issue next year again. So that's my only comment.
Anybody else? Okay, that item remains on the table.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
I wasn't aware of the communication prior to Ms. Mitchell reading it. If they're dismissing it, or they're not going to pursue it, remove it from the table and dismiss it.
Okay.
It's just a suggestion, but
Okay,
it
yeah,
sounds
no.
like there's not going to be anyone here at the next meeting for Lowe's, and if
No,
they
you're
were
cor-
here, they'd say, never mind.
That's good suggestion. All right, I'll entertain a motion to, based on the email that Ms. Mitchell received and the information that we now have before us, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss this without prejudice.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
All right, item 7 will also remain on the table. That is the Lake County Council of Aging with respect to another means of ingress and egress to and from the property.
So was that, just to clarify, that was a combined motion to remove from the table and to dismiss?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 8, preliminary subdivision of 17 residential lots at 9120 and 9152 Jackson Street. Mr. Summers?
Again, history on this project, this is the map that was used for the zoning change to RBG. We then came in, I believe, about a month ago, and based on some feedback from the administration and this board, we've revised the plan down to 17 units. We've made some changes based on feedback we got, and this is the proposed plan for preliminary approval. We've incorporated a number of things that were questions from this board. One, we will have a sidewalk all along the driveway from Jackson Street and around the loop perimeter. 2, there will be a access strip to the new park. Whether that gets used or not, it is a city code. So we're allowing for that. We have a 15-foot buffer around the entire project where there will be no tree disturbance in that area to protect the neighbors. At this time, the sidewalk was one time a condition of the approval of this board. There's a very tough situation out there. The bridge is not wide enough for a sidewalk, and there is a very steep slope on the right-hand side, which would require removing many trees in the conservation area or the open space. At this time, based on recommendation of the administration, we will be providing, this is actually shown as 15 feet, but they're requesting a 20-foot sidewalk easement in addition to the right-of-way on Jackson Street in case the sidewalk or a bike trail is ever desired to be installed.
I know the administration had a lot of various points in the report. Are there any suggestions or any recommendations, questions you want to ask of the applicant now? Like, for example, the driveway lengths, the loop road, the realignment of some of these parcels. I know, Larry, you had mentioned about kind of straightening them out a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, we did have a meeting with Mr. Summers, which included planning staff, engineering, and building, and we talked extensively about the various changes needed to the plan from the sidewalk to the driveways, and I believe we were all comfortable with the changes that were proposed as Mr. Summers has presented it at this time.
What was discussed about the parking spaces, not the public parking spaces? You have 3 here proposed. I think on the original plan there were more. What was resolved? How was that resolved? Because I know the administration wanted a few more.
Mr. Summers, I don't recall an extensive discussion about that. I mean, I certainly, I think we like to see as much visitor parking as possible. And so if there was an opportunity to add some additional visitor parking spaces, I would say that we would definitely encourage that.
Is that something that can be considered without causing?
Absolutely, we'll go to more spaces. The other thing that I would note is when this was originally submitted, this was a 20-foot wide driveway. The administration's requesting 25-foot driveway, which will allow parking on one side of the street and still allow a vehicle or a fire truck to get around.
Okay.
So, again, we would put more off-street. We'd be willing to go to 6 or 8 spaces, maybe 8. That'd be a half a space for each unit in the development. So we'd be willing to go to 8.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Varga.
I noticed the unit, without much detail, I noticed that the unit is a different unit than you were using before, that it's a little wider, not as deep from the original plan that you showed. The units themselves have gotten a little wider, not as deep, just the footprint is a little
That's
different.
correct.
Right.
And what we've done is identified the largest building footprint that can go in here.
Okay. Do they all have 2-car garages?
Yes, they do.
What I notice is inconsistency in the nature of the driveways from the house. If there's a 2-car garage, but can you always park 2 cars in front of the garage door and not be on the sidewalk? It looks like there would be a hard time doing that.
I believe is one of the conditions that was talked about in the write-up that they're.
Yeah, they mentioned something about not being in the street, but I would want to change that so that when you put your 2 cars in front of your garage door, 2 spaces, that you're not blocking the sidewalk.
That's agreeable.
That you're free of the sidewalk.
There's also going to be a change on lot number 17. This is a short driveway. It needs to come out the front, and it'll be a longer driveway, but.
Then you'll have your space, yeah. My concern was that you were going to get into a situation where you couldn't park 2 cars in front of, in your own driveway.
Or it's hanging over the sidewalk.
Or I don't want it hanging over the sidewalk. So it may require some slight adjustments in order to do
The final
that.
plan submittal will reflect a plan that indicates room for 2 parking spaces, whether they're stacked or side by side on every unit.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, Mr. Cicero.
The units 10 and 14,
Okay?
they just, how you have it laid out on this plan, just doesn't seem like that's going to work. They feel, at least they feel to me like they're just wedged in between two of the other properties, and the way those driveways hit the side of the house. I'm just curious, can you design that a different way to make it look a little more symmetrical with how you're doing the rest of the development? It looks like they were added on to
No,
get
not
two more
really. In this
homes.
project, it originally started out as 20 units, and now we're down to 17. So basically, what we've done is made the units wider for better curb appeal. Basically, what these are is they're taking advantage, especially Unit 10, we're taking advantage of the view. The building would be designed so that the view is to the back, and basically what you're doing here is a side-load garage.
But the close proximity between 10 and 11 looks really tight to me, as well as 13 and 14.
We can look at turning those a little bit, tweaking them a little bit on the final plan.
Yeah, I would just, I'm sorry.
Are you finished?
Yeah, that's good.
I'm just adding on to his comment, maybe, and I hate to make real specific suggestions, but maybe 10 could be aligned more with the 7, 8, 9 oriented, it could stay where it is, but it just could rotate a little bit. Of course, you're close to the property line. I understand the constraints you have there, but those, if you drove around this loop, those houses would be almost, they'd be stuck back. You wouldn't actually see them very well. The other houses would block your view of those houses significantly. Maybe someone likes that. You have to sell them. I mean, it's not like we're trying to. But I do get that feeling with those, that those two are not going to be very visible from the street. Yeah, that's all.
Ms. Mitchell, you had mentioned the extensive discussions you had between your department and the other pertinent departments of the city. Was Mr. Cicero's concern part of those discussions? And you mentioned you were satisfied with the results of those discussions?
We did talk about the arrangement of the units. We didn't call out 10 and 14 in particular. And just speaking with Larry, I mean, there might be some options to make some minor adjustments, even if you're shifting Unit 17 slightly, which then allows a little bit of wiggle room for 14. 10 is kind of tight. There might be ability to move it a little bit, but we're happy to work with Mr. Summers in trying to come up with, some alternative arrangements or just a slight modification, but I don't think that the staff had a grave concern about that. We talked extensively, to be honest with you, about the sidewalk and the inability to really, have it along Jackson Street. That was a big part of our discussion, and we were satisfied with the location as it's proposed on the plan. And we did discuss the driveway lengths in the hopes that those could be, as generous as possible to each unit, which I know Mr. Summers just addressed as well. So in light of the loss of the units he's already removed, and the extensive water surface limits that are shown there, I think he's working pretty well with the limitations of the site.
All right, thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, Mr. Varga?
Had it ever been considered to make that loop a one-way loop, the driveway? To just, when you pull in, just go to the right and then go around to reduce the size of the road rather than increase the size of the road?
Fire's not in favor of the one-way.
I mean, they could go both ways, but I mean, the fact that that all of that is a two-directional loop, it seems a little redundant. If it was a one-way, you could actually reduce it and still have plenty of room for a fire truck. I think, you could have 16 feet, 18 feet, and it would reduce the amount of pavement. I don't know, do you have a reaction to that?
Not in favor of more pavement, but I do think that.
No, I'm saying less pavement.
I understand, but I think with the radiuses to turn a big fire truck, that
It still wouldn't
16
make,
feet
it wouldn't
would
make,
not work.
wouldn't make any difference. All right, then I withdraw the comment.
Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Tiedemann.
Quick question on the mail center. How is that set up? Is that for them to drive in to jump out and get their mail, or is there a sidewalk going up to that, or?
There's a sidewalk in front of it, but you cannot, unless you get lucky and have a low box in these new box units that are out, you typically can't reach the top one out of your
No,
car.
I didn't, I meant, do they have to pull up, get out, go get their mail?
Yes.
Is that how it's set up?
Pull up, or it's such a fairly small community, I think we're encouraging with the sidewalk people to walk to their unit.
Is that mail area covered in any way, or how is that set up?
No, in our other communities that we're putting them, they're just an open, we don't have a shelter of
Just
any
the
kind.
silver
It's a
box with-
weatherproof box. They are now required by the Postal Service. They do not do individual mailbox delivery or home delivery.
Okay.
And you, Mr. Cox?
Cook.
Oh, sorry.
Rick, are you going to bring that sewer down east, north side of Jackson?
No, it comes out of right now, the proposal, and I've met with the Lake County Utilities Department, we're gonna come across Jackson. And if you notice, there's an easement here, and we're gonna come up, and we're coming all the way across, and we've provided an easement to the property line in case the city ever wants to tie in the backside of the park with, say, restroom facilities. So we're making arrangements to that sewer easement to come all the way to the park property.
Here, yeah.
There's a water line on the north side that would be a conflict, and we couldn't get the sewer in.
But you're going to have to come down Jackson to the east at your tie-in
From the
manhole.
corner of Michael.
Right. So are you going to
Across
run on the
Jackson.
north side of Jackson or the
South.
south side? Okay. You're going to cross under Jackson at Michael.
No, we're not crossing Jackson, we're crossing Michael, and we're gonna put a new manhole on the south side of Jackson Street, bore under under Michael, and then come along the frontage, the two residences to our property line, and then we'll go south in this easement as indicated.
Okay.
Is that it, Mr. Cook?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Perkovic?
I think this might be for the administration. In our packet, there is a statement that says that the Planning Commission will need to determine if this new plan is a substantial departure from the approved plan before voting. Do we have to stipulate that, or is it just our voting?
You can make a comment relative to the motion that's made. I find that this is in substantial agreement with the previously approved plan and motion to approve.
Okay.
It can be something like
Yeah, I
that.
was just going to say, to me, it's virtually the same concept. We just have less units.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further comments? All right, hearing none. Now, shouldn't we take a vote on the number 9, the amendment to the development plan first, and then address the preliminary subdivision?
That'd be a logical progression.
Okay.
They're obviously part and parcel of the same
Right.
request, so however you want to do it, it's fine.
All right, I'll take item number 9. We'll entertain a motion to amend the approved development plan at Jackson Street as Mr. Summers presented to the commission tonight. I have a motion.
Second.
No, do I have a
Oh,
motion?
yes, you have a motion, I'm sorry.
I hear a second.
I'll second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Now we'll entertain a motion on the preliminary subdivision. Ms. Mitchell, they have to return to us with the final.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
okay, this is the preliminary subdivision of the 17 residential lots that have now been created because of the 100-year floodplain. I'll entertain a motion.
Sorry, for the record, and only because that was a point that our floodplain administrator made a point of. It is not a floodplain. That's why they've identified it as a 100-year water surface limit. So,
Okay.
just for the record.
Correction noted, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the one stipulation.
I have a second.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Item number 10. Okay. Miscellaneous review of the outdoor display of merchandise at 5782 Heisley Road in the M1 Light Manufacturing District by Mentor MFG and Pierre Hodgins. Is the applicant here? There he is. Please state your name for the clerk.
Pierre Hodgins.
Go ahead, sir.
So we're looking to, underneath this front overhang of the building, highlighted area, add space for four machines to be displayed there. The area is now lit and has a stone pavement under it. Building overhangs that area with lighting.
Okay, how many, right now you have two
Display pads that are in the
On-
front setback of the building.
on each side of the driveway?
Correct.
You're asking us to put an additional 4
Underneath the overhang
underneath the overhang. That will remain there,
for small equipment.
that will remain there 24 hours. Okay. Mr. Zeman, just briefly, I don't think we have to get into it, but in the report, it mentioned that the violations were referred to the law department and the issue went to bench trial in November. Did that trial ever proceed, or are we here today trying to resolve that?
Actually, we'd worked out an agreement. The case is technically still pending, but I know there have been absolutely no violations. There's been nothing displayed out there except on those 2 approved display pads since we effectively resolved that litigation. And there was discussion at that time that Mr. Hodgins would probably be reapplying to get some small equipment out on that front porch area. We didn't have a position on it, whatever the commission believes is appropriate. It's up to your judgment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other additional comments from the administration? No?
Nothing at this time.
Members of the commission, any questions, concerns, issues, statements?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Varga.
What kind of stuff are you going to want to put out there? I mean, can you be a little specific about the,
Yeah, we sell smaller machines, zero-turn mowers, very small tractors, not the type that would be safe out on the front display pads.
I guess my concern, and I speak to the city and to you at the same time, is that we don't, you know, if it's Lowe's, if it's, places, big box places, we don't allow them to put lawnmower stuff outside in front of their building. I'm trying to see that this doesn't become a precedent, that we allow you to do something and not let other people do the same thing. I mean, are you talking about things like hand mowers?
No, we don't sell walk-behind equipment.
Okay, so these are bigger items.
Yes.
That would be considered vehicles?
Yes.
I don't know, I'm trying to define if there's, that's the wiggle room, that these have become vehicles and not, you know, smaller equipment that you might buy at anywhere. I was gonna say Sears, but we don't have a Sears anymore, so. But, you know, is it only, it'll be only 4 pieces of equipment that we would consider, we could call vehicles?
Yes.
Chair, can I address?
Mr. Cicero.
The vehicles, see, I guess I'm where you're at, Mr. Varga. They sound like vehicles that Lowe's would have or Home Depot would have, they're ride-on vehicles. Is that what these vehicles are similar to?
Well, they're commercial vehicles, they're not.
But I'm just mean size-wise.
I guess so, yeah. They would be under the building overhang, though.
Right.
And it's an area that is lit, it's not enclosed on the sidewalls.
That's the same concern I have, is the precedent it could set. While 4 here might not seem like a big deal, if we had Lowe's here next time wanting to put those same size vehicles out front, we're starting to set a precedent. That's my concern.
Commission members, any further concerns?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Perkovic.
I guess I'd just like to expound on that a little bit. I mean, part of the way I'm looking at it would be that a lot of times when we have the other stores that are so forth are trying to come before us and display merchandise, a lot of time that is usually on the sidewalk and it's bagged mulch and so forth, which is a whole different animal. I guess the good thing about this submission is that the building somewhat has this covered patio. It differs a lot from a sidewalk where you're walking up to the building because the entrance is actually on the side of the building. So this, I think, has a little bit more of a display quality inherently built in. So I think that might be part of the way we should really look at this as well if we do approve that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the city if they have any leaning or guidance to give us on this.
Maybe some more specificity to the type of equipment. Obviously, a common household retail product like a push mower or even a riding tractor may raise those concerns relative to be analogous to what's on offer at a Home Depot or a Lowe's. So maybe we're going to have to get some specificity as to the type of equipment, that it is in fact a commercial grade, and so therefore it's consistent, with a larger equipment or passenger vehicle dealership. That may provide a little better differentiation between these products and something of a more household retail nature.
So, asking the applicant, would you feel comfortable if we limited what you could put out there to things that were larger than what you could buy off the floor at Lowe's?
Yes.
I mean, just to stick Lowe's, but, Home Depot, any of those places. The stuff that they have there, the kinds of equipment, and that includes riding mowers, that if the stuff that you would want to present would be larger and more of a commercial product than what you would get at those other places.
Can we identify the product? Is there?
Well, again, this goes back to what is it that you actually want to put out there? I don't know what you want to. If we want to define it, you need to tell me what you need to put out there.
Utility vehicles, commercial zero-turn mowers, subcompact tractor, none of which you find at a mass merchant.
Sure. Could we introduce that as a stipulation, those definitions? Yes.
Sure.
I think we could. So no more than 4, and to stipulate that type of equipment.
Is that a motion?
Is it new or used vehicle inventory?
Yeah,
I don't know if
good
you take
point.
things on trade. Okay, new only.
Okay.
New only.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, so that would be my motion to accept.
Subcontract.
Do we have any existing?
Yeah, 2 conditions.
So that would be a third condition, to limit the equipment to the type as defined by the applicant.
Would you restate your third condition as a complete
Okay.
sentence?
Mr. Chairman, you could actually, again, expand on number 1.
Okay.
To what?
I lost my yeah.
Number 1, just add your amended language.
Okay, with it, that we would limit the equipment to, and you wrote down the list of the equipment, I don't remember what it was. Could you repeat that list of the type of equipment?
Commercial zero-turn mowers, utility vehicles, and subcompact tractors.
Yes, that would be the limited type of equipment that we'll be talking, commercial grade.
And new inventory only.
And new inventory only. So then the motion is to accept this with the two conditions, the first one being edited, as we just stated.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann? Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hodgins. All right, item number 11, miscellaneous review of a transfer of a conditional use permit at 6231 Reynolds Road in the B1 Community Service District. Is that applicant here?
Yes. Hi, Will Frazier, 8724 Williams Road, Chardon, Ohio.
Go ahead. Explain to us what you're here for.
Oh, okay, so I have Brightwood Animal Hospital and Mentor Animal Hospital. I have accepted an offer pending this approval to sell to National Veterinary Associates. National is, now that the Mars family bought Veterinary Centers of America, the biggest consolidator of veterinary practices. They've got 500 hospitals, 2,000 veterinarians. I will stay on as their, work for them, but they're going to buy the business. I'll retain the real estate, and so they want it to be as seamless and appear like nothing has changed other than, but, ownership of the business is changing.
Okay. So you're simply transferring the ownership name into the new ownership on the CUP?
Yes.
Commission members, any questions?
Chairman, does the city have any outstanding complaints or a history of complaints or issues with the property?
We do not.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for item number 11.
So moved with 3 conditions.
Could I interrupt? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Attorney suggested putting a condition that the deal close, because if the deal doesn't close, they've got my conditional use permit.
Obviously, you're attorney. Okay, can you amend that motion?
Just add another.
Add on?
Yes, I'll revise that motion with 4 conditions, the 4th being that the deal must close, otherwise it just reverts back to the original.
Yeah, he suggested it's supposed to close May 7th, so it must close May 7th for this to, for it to.
Thank you.
Before I ask for a second, Mr. Seaman, do you have something you want to add?
It's okay. It's a little unusual, but it's okay. As long as it's basically a conditional transfer, so that's fine. I think it works.
Okay. I'll entertain a second.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
All right, Dr. Fraser, we got one more here. Miscellaneous review of a transfer of a conditional use permit at 9640 Old Johnny Cake Ridge Road. And this is the veterinary hospital adjacent to Red Wine and Brew. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Same thing,
Same
National Veterinary Associates is purchasing that business also.
and you'll be on as a consultant?
I'll keep the real estate and run the business for them.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion on item number 12.
I'll move with that same 4th condition that it must close.
The conditional must close.
I'll second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Just one final question.
Sure.
They are anxious to have this paperwork in their hand. Is there someone I can talk to tomorrow and get confirmation I can forward to them?
Larry, Kathy?
That would be Jessica Frost.
Okay, yeah, they want to close Monday and they need to know that this happened. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, item number 13, miscellaneous review of an amendment to the Newell Creek Development Plan at 8161 Norton Parkway. Applicants are here, full force.
We are.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dave Mitchell, 30050 Chagrin Boulevard, Suite 100, Pepper Pike, Ohio, 44124. No relation to Miss Mitchell.
Thank you for
She's
that
been very
clarification.
helpful. I'm joined tonight by Dan Sirk of SA Group, who's the project architect, as well as Alan Wiley of GBC Design, who is the civil engineer. Both of these gentlemen were involved in construction of the nursing home that presently exists on this site. If you have not visited the nursing home or driven by and want to take a tour, we certainly invite you to do that. We're very proud of that facility and expect that the proposed facility would match that in terms of quality and materials. So we have two matters before you tonight. The first is an application for miscellaneous review relating to whether an amendment to the Newell Creek Development Plan is required to permit the construction and operation of an assisted living facility that specializes in memory care on the same site as the nursing facility. And then, assuming that the discussion goes well, we would proceed to a review of the applicant's preliminary site plan. As outlined, thoroughly outlined in the staff report, this commission and council previously approved an amendment to the Newell Creek Development Plan that allowed the construction and operation of the skilled nursing facility. And at that time had determined that development of that facility constituted a substantial departure from the intent of the previously approved plan. Back in August of 2013, the commission, or this commission, approved a modification of that plan to permit a 99-bed skilled nursing facility. And then in September of 13, council adopted ordinance 13063 that amended the plan with conditions. So tonight we're here to discuss whether or not the addition of an assisted living facility is in substantial agreement with the previously approved plan or constitutes a substantial departure. And staff, I believe in consultation with the law department, has concluded that this is not a substantial departure. If you look back at the map of the development plan that was included with the staff report, it identifies our site as senior residence with council's approval of a skilled nursing facility. So by definition, both council and this commission have sort of concluded that a skilled nursing facility fits into senior residence. Tonight we're talking about an assisted living facility, which is basically a step down in care on the continuum of care from a skilled nursing facility. It stands between skilled nursing and independent living. It's a licensed business. They have staffing requirements. They have building requirements. So we're somewhere in between skilled nursing and independent living on the continuum of care. So what are we changing? What does this application propose to change? Well, clearly we're adding a second building that was not contemplated when the nursing facility was approved. We don't view that as a substantial departure. We have plenty of acreage. We're at a less than a 50% coverage of the site with impervious structures and driveways. And so we don't consider that a major departure. I guess the second question is whether or not the construction and operation as a use is in substantial agreement with the previously approved plan. And again, assisted living facilities are allowed by right in the PUD district. You already have a skilled nursing facility there. We are a slight step down in care. And when you consider the full spectrum of what's allowed in a senior residence designated area, we think we fall right in that allowed use. Happy to talk about the differences, if you'd like, between assisted living and skilled nursing technically, if you'd like. I think everybody kind of generally understands that. But this building will be licensed. It will be a non-combustible building, so it'll be metal construction. And again, there are staffing requirements that we'll have to abide by. But we will have a specialty in memory care. So somebody that might come into that facility may be a typical assisted living resident that has some memory impairment, and that may go all the way up to somebody who doesn't recall who they are and really need to be in a lockdown unit. We don't have that capability at the nursing home. Some nursing homes do. We do not plan that for the existing building there, so hence the reason we want to build a second structure for that. Well, I'll not get into the building specifics so much until we address the issue of the amendment of the development plan.
Thank you. Ms. Mitchell. when we approved the amendment to the development plan on that portion of a 10-acre parcel there, did we just limit it to a portion of the 10-acre, which would require them to come back and seek this amendment? Or did we allow for the whole entire 10-acre parcel to be amended to allow this healthcare type of use? I know you may not have been here then, but you
Well,
were-
based on the research that we did on the prior approval, the 10 acres was approved. There was only one building on the 10 acres.
Right.
But in fact, the 10 acres was approved for the specific 99-unit facility that stands today. So I think, which is why the staff made the comments that we did, that, you know, while the specific building that's being presented today was not there at the time, which is why we need the amendment, the overall land area was designated as such.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, would you like to expound on that, or any questions or concerns? With none, I'd like to entertain a motion on item number 13 first, on the amendment to the development plan to allow the memory care facility on this 10-acre parcel.
I'll make that motion as you just stated.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Perkovic?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, on the preliminary site plan, let's get into, a little bit of the details. I'm interested in the shared parking. I know Mr. Varga is interested in the architectural, how it's going to play with the existing building, so on and so forth. So can you discuss those, please?
Again, Dave Mitchell here on behalf of the applicant. I'm going to let some of my more experienced counterparts here tell you about the building since they designed it, but I'll just give you a little bit of detail on it. It's a two-story, roughly 56,000 square foot building with a lower level. The nursing home has a walkout basement that has all of the back of house activities in it, kitchen, laundry, so on. This building will have the same thing on the lower level. You will be able to back a truck up to the lower level for delivery purposes. And that lower level is approximately 9,600 square feet. The building is a little over 10 feet off the east property line, not 5 feet as mentioned in the staff report. 92 feet from the nearest point of the nursing home, 111 feet from the south property line, and roughly 55 feet from the nearest point of the north property line. It's 41 feet 3 inches tall to the peak, roughly 31 feet 8 inches to the mean height of the roof. We've proposed 7 new parking spaces for this building. We are going to eliminate 4 that currently exist for the nursing home, so we will have a total of 103 parking spaces on site. That exceeds the minimum requirement and the maximum required, frankly, of 77 or 78 spaces, depending on how you do the calculation. So we're over parked, but we think that we need the use of those spaces. Right now, if you go to the nursing home, the spaces that will be closest to this building, so they're on the east side of the nursing home parking lot, over in here, generally are not used. Most of the back parking is used for employees, and then visitors are using these spaces in the front typically. That building, by the way, has roughly 83 patients as of yesterday. It's a 99-bed facility. We are extremely pleased with the fill-up. We have a waiting list, and the reason we have a waiting list, although we're not full, is we're being very selective about, or the operator's being very selective about the type of patients it takes. So there's plenty of Medicaid patients that desire to get into the building. The operator is trying to sort of regulate and control the quality and acuity of the patients that come in there. So we have a lot of private pay patients and a lot of Medicare patients and a lot of managed care patients. We're trying to limit the Medicaid population there. In terms of, and I'll let Dan walk you through the building in itself, but I know the question is coming that in terms of the comments that were made in the staff report, the only one that we had difficulty with is the fire department's request for a fire lane on the east side of the building. Since the building's only 10 feet off the property line, we would have to try to make some adjustment to the building to accommodate a fire lane. We cannot shift the building to the west because out just off the existing parking lot for the nursing home, there is a water line easement that runs all the way around the circumference of the parking lot for the nursing home. And we can't build a building over the top of that. So to try to shift the building, we would be into that water line easement, which is a prohibition. We just can't do it without completely tearing up the parking lot and rerouting that. So that's the reason the building is where it is. We have fire access on 3 sides of the building. So we have it on the north side, we have the existing driveway for the nursing home on the west side, and we have fire access on the south side. And we have proposed that in the event there needs to be access to the east side of the building, that can be obtained using the parking lot for the rec center, which is a common area for the association. We are part of that association currently. We are, I believe, the largest contributor in terms of annual dues to that association. And if you happen to look back at at council's approval of the nursing home, it actually permitted a driveway to come off of the rec center parking lot and to connect to the driveway of the nursing home. We didn't think that was a good idea at the time. We still don't think that's a great idea, but that concept at least envisions there being some communication, if you will, between traffic on the rec center parcel and this particular property. So also to attempt to construct a fire lane around the east side would require at the north end of the building a huge retaining wall. The property drops off significantly behind the back of the building, so to try to get a turn radius around that corner of the building, you'd have to pull it away from the building, which, the further away from the building you get, the higher the retaining wall has to be. So there's basically a cliff there that we had to accommodate for the nursing home. This would be even more severe. So that's the reason we didn't contemplate a fire lane. The other comments I think were all acceptable. Happy to have Dan walk you through the design of the building if you'd like.
Daniel Sirk, SA Group, 1322 Old River Road, Cleveland, Ohio. Just picking up on that point, we were actually able to utilize that opportunity of the site fall off to, if you can see in this area right here, to tuck the service entry well deep back below so as not to impede on any view lines from the occupants or the occupants of the existing building. I can bring up the floor plan of the building to show you that we have a unique design for a memory care facility here in the fact that all the colored are the units that span around the building, and it's a single loaded facility, meaning that when you leave your unit, you are going to be facing the inner courtyard of the building, which is a theme that we wanted to have of an organizing unit so that as people move around the facility, they have something that they can tie into as a beacon of organization. We're still working with the owner on what that will be, but it would be part of that courtyard. Then all the other functions of the building, the dining hall, the private dining, the entry feature, and all those are circulating around that. We also, as we did in the other facility, hopefully you have the opportunity to see, is taking advantage of the hillside, looking out over to the north, out the back. So from this area right here, you can see that there's, again, another outdoor porch system that leads you out to the rear of the building. In addition, on the upper level of the building, so this is a two-story building. As Mr. Mitchell mentioned, it is a non-combustible building versus the other building, which is a wood structure. The inner courtyard is then also connected with an outdoor balcony so that the occupants have that connectivity to the exterior throughout the year. And then again, we utilize the opportunity to put functions that could take advantage of that natural light 4 seasons. The exterior of the building is a variation of a theme of the existing building. I'm going to show this is the existing building. This is currently what you would see as you drive down the street here. This was previously approved after some good dialogue at the meetings similar to this. And the only thing that we're looking at on this building that may be slightly different is we may vary up the stone a little bit so that the building has a little bit of a different character. Architecturally, it was a challenge because it is a 2-story building next to a 1-story building. So as you can see, we've hit the roofs back. We've tried to bring down items to bring down that scale. But again, talking earlier about the natural light and the views here, this location will be in plan. Let me show that to you. Is right here in the building on the second level. This is open to the lobby below, and this is basically a space that wraps around it. So you can actually walk right up to that window and view to the south. And all that southern light being brought into that portion of the building. So that's why you see the porte cochere as a flat roof versus the one on the existing building, which has its own character.
Materials are roughly the same.
Correct. And then I can bring up some other views. So here's the approach view. And then here's a sort of a view from above a little bit to see. And as David mentioned, you can see the proximity of that paved surface for the parking lot for the pool building. Again, this side of the building is facing the existing, so we wanted the 2 buildings to be complementary. And also bringing the stone material down. Many times you see the sides of the building just being flat, hardy board siding. This will have the addition of that stone because the owner knows that as the approach view to the building, that will be prominent.
Good for the fire.
You want to go with that?
Yeah. Just to illustrate what we're talking about relating to the fire. So Ohio Fire Code requires us to be within 150 feet of all points of the building. So I guess that was originally based on the length of fire hoses for a truck. So this exhibit illustrates that if you were to park a fire truck in this parking lot here, that you could reach this corner of the building. Obviously, with this drive, you can put a fire truck back there, fire truck here, and fire truck in the front. So we are able to reach all points of the building.
Oh, and in addition, in response to the code of the property line, we have limited the amount of openings on that side of the building to well below what's required by the code for the distance of 10'6" from a property line.
Given, Mr. Mitchell, given that extreme drop, that slope behind the Mentor Rehabilitation Center, and there's going to be one behind the Memory Care Center, have you any concerns or any issues have come about since that Mentor Ridge has been operating from the residents below the slope?
I'm not aware of any complaints. There is a tree line that runs almost the whole length of that ridge. Actually, the trees start a little down below, but reach well above the ridge. We will lose some of those trees at the northeast corner, but our landscape plan would be designed to have new trees developed there as quickly as possible.
Commission members, questions and comments to the applicant and/or the administration?
Mr. Chairman, are you depending on anything but the south and west sides for area, the allowable area factor? You're not using the accessibility on the east property to increase your size?
No, no.
You're not taking a credit, right? You're not taking credit for that.
Correct.
And is the building sprinkled?
Yes.
Okay, that's very good. The building is fine, looks good. You put a lot of thought in, especially the interior organization. I'm sure you're quite pleased with the building. It's interesting, the only place where I've looked at the elevations, the only place I have any concern, and that's really has to do with the fact that there's residents behind this that are quite a ways below this, is that I would like to see a landscaping plan that would mitigate the view of that large retaining wall, the lower masonry wall, stone wall with some evergreens, things that are going to be there all the time, so that the folks, when they look out their back windows, don't see this large retaining wall. Yes, that one up there, right. And that maybe you might think about extending, I know the building is very nice and symmetrical, but maybe you could extend the wall next to the loading dock area, so that, maybe extend a masonry wall to shield a delivery truck. Again, that's going to be up above these people's houses, maybe at the level of their second floor or even higher of the lower houses, so that any deliveries that are made are shielded from view and sound. So maybe just take that wall and extend it out to
Excellent suggestion. That would also go to helping breaking down the scale of that.
Right, but I'm mostly concerned about visually and the sound of delivery trucks, and it's quite a ways up, it's an even landscape, and that the new landscaping plan be of evergreen, at least, a significant size, so that you kind of break down the size of that retaining wall, and it'll be shielded all year long.
Sure.
Those are my only comments.
Commission members, any additional comments? Okay. As you know, this is the preliminary site plan review. So the concerns and the comments that Mr. Varga made, we're going to be looking for those when you come back and we look at the final site plan. Just one question, as far as the health and safety of the patients, you've got that second floor and you said you've got balconies and there's sliding doors and so on and so forth. Is it free access out to those patios, or is there supervision? How's that work?
Yeah, we anticipate that the lower level will handle lower level of care
Yes.
patients, so more freedom. That the upper level of the building will be a lockdown unit, so they won't have access to the elevators. They won't have access to the outside unless supervised. And we're working on sort of what the plan is for any railings or that kind of thing to be higher than normal and so on, to prevent somebody from falling over or thinking
Excellent.
they can escape it somehow.
I have one other question, just on the eastern border, is that going to be fenced or is that going to be open?
It'll be open.
Okay, that's fine, because that would at least allow the justification for the fire access if there's no fence there. Thank you.
All right, at this time here, on the preliminary site plan, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the 6 conditions noted.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Perkovic? Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Cicero?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Procedurally, do we need a separate vote with respect to approval and amendment of the amendment of the development plan?
We did that.
They did
Okay,
that.
we're done. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you with the final site. Thank you. Our last item of business, number 15, an informal rezoning of 1.1 acres from OV Old Village District to OV Old Village District at Center Street. The applicant is here. Before you proceed, Larry, I'm just a little confused. It says from OV, Old Village District, to OV, Old Village District? Or Mr. Zeman?
It's, yeah, the old village is, some of the, for most of you are the newer members of the Planning Commission. The history of this, goes back quite a few years. So you may have to get comfortable if I'm going to, if I'm going to go through all of it. It was intended, the sort of the driver of it was the former Center Street School and a proposal to redevelop this entire block, utilizing the former Center Street School is kind of the cornerstone of that development, to preserve it and obviously to adapt it to a brand new use. The project partially materialized, and obviously with the recession, as well as a negative referendum vote on a subsequent phase, the project basically failed. And in the sense that it didn't get completely built out as envisioned. Components of it, however, we can look on with I think quite a lot of success. The preservation of the Center Street School and the adjacent coach houses are fully occupied, and obviously now Erie Bank, but at the time Lake National Bank building, while outside of the old village, was nonetheless a component of this as well. And the Presley extension, of course, is probably pretty close to build out this year with single-family detached residences. So this is the last of the parcels. It was the subject of a rezoning by Mr. Knez that was approved by referendum. At the time, there was, I believe, 4 total structures that were contemplated on the site. The front buildings were going to have ground floor commercial component, and the density was reached rather. There was an opportunity there to sort of borrow a little density from the remaining portions of the land. In other words, the density pursuant to the old village regulations is 8 units per acre. The approved plan, I think, had a bit more than that. But it utilized density on the adjacent parcels because that was only going to be at 1 unit per acre. And so some of that density was borrowed, if you will, while it was all under common control. That's no longer the case, obviously. This is a unique situation. One of the aspects of the rezoning is when the voters approve it, they get what they approved, meaning the development plan shall be applied. It guides future development of the property. Minor technical adjustments, sure. Sometimes a building has to move a couple feet to accommodate utilities or wider drive aisle or things of that nature. Sometimes, minor architectural changes may be required. So, but generally, when it's approved, that's it. And if it doesn't get built, it doesn't get built, which is some of the risks that you run with this type of restrictive rezoning. Again, it's so that people get exactly what it is that was approved, and there aren't, they'll get one thing presented and another thing materializes. So obviously, Mr. Knez's project did not move forward, and the property has been vacant. And so when we're talking about rezoning from Old Village back to Old Village, we're talking effectively about the creation of a new development plan.
Gotcha.
And approval of that new development plan. Unfortunately, what has been, for better or worse, what has been proposed is not in conformity with the original plan. Ways that it could be in conformity if the footprints of the buildings that were proposed, corresponded with the footprints of the prior approval. We could look at that as a point of agreement. The use is different too, and that's, I think we'll have some discussion tonight about the fact that there is no commercial component to this proposal. That is required. It is mandatory that an Old Village rezoning have a mixture of commercial use and residential use. One use can be dominant, but nonetheless, that mixture is required. And I'd have to go back through some of the history to explain why that was part of these district regulations. Architecturally speaking, again, that's kind of a bit of a problem because you can't just replicate someone else's plans, of course. Mr. Knez had submitted specific plans. Those are protected architectural works under federal copyright law, and unless a subsequent developer were to somehow acquire the rights to those works, they don't own them. So we would probably necessarily, if we could come up with another conforming project here with a new developer, potentially the approved architectural plans could be reworked a bit, for that practical issue. So that's what brings you here tonight, is a fresh proposal in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zima. Gentlemen, please introduce yourself for the clerk and proceed.
My name is Jeff Kamey with Dara Properties, 17441 Lakes Edge Trail, Chagrin Falls. And we're proposing a residential development, which is essentially less dense and has more green space than the previously approved plan. The previously approved plan was essentially a mirror image of a development that was completed in Willoughby. And if you look at that development, my understanding is the residential component of that did very well, and it was successfully sold off as condominium units. The business commercial component of that, if you go by and look at it, is vacant. It's not doing well. So that led me to take a close look at a 100% residential development that has green space. It's less dense. It's more open. When you drive north on Center Street, you can see the bank. The residential development is better than mixed use in that it's simpler in forming, from my perspective, it's going to be simpler in terms of forming the condo association, simpler to market. And what we'll be doing really is essentially providing more customers for the surrounding commercial businesses, for the retail around it, going north on Center Street and to the south as well. There's basically business and retail all around. The lower density allows for more green space, a better parking situation. If you have commercial units, it's actually a fairly tight, to make this work from a business perspective, it's a fairly tight lot. We were able to set up 16 residential units, 3 stories each with roof decks. So you can see from the layout, it's essentially three structures, 3 buildings, and then with a courtyard, and there'll be landscaping and green space in the middle. So in terms of traffic flow, also, it's an interesting setup. We were thinking enter only in that first driveway entrance to the south, and then cars could pull up and pull in. There are 2-car garages in each unit, and we feel that there's enough parking for the residents and also some visitor parking. This is a better depiction here, and you can see in order to go north on Center Street, they would have to flow out, going up, around, back onto Presley and up north, and that's where the light is. They're back on Center Street going north. So it's a little bit, a little bit of navigation there. So that's what we're proposing. It's a very simple, it's a simpler project that is less dense, more environmentally appealing, and it's the theme, the appearance of it is in line with the historic theme of that area. So the palette would likely be very similar to the bank building right to the north of it.
Anything additional you want to add?
I think that's about it. That's the.
Any statements, questions, comments from the administration? In addition to those-
Other than what was made in the report, nothing.
So there's pretty, in terms of a formal, they've got a little ways to go to comply with the old Village District regulations.
Right.
They do not meet the permeable surface area calculations. The density is something that I think we'll have to continue to study a bit. Again, we're no longer looking at a developer proposing a uniformed, you know, component of a larger development. We're looking at, and some of that 1.1 acres is right-of-way, by the way. So that the density is going to be a particular issue, and we'll give that some further attention. The lack of any commercial component, I'll have to give you the history on that as to why it's not just a throwaway. You know, this isn't Manhattan, and in terms of street noise and people's expectations relative to residential dwellings, we are in a suburban environment here. So we go back in time a little bit to when the Old Village was proposed, and the type of structures that we felt would be preferably to be developed. It wasn't to see a net loss in these commercial corridors. So Old Village is not primarily in a residential classification. It really was more being driven, one, for historic preservation, the Center Street School building being the prime example. And secondarily, at the time it was proposed, the housing market was red hot. It was a bubble, as it turned out. With hindsight, we know that now. But it also provided a good opportunity to leverage that bubble to get some higher quality commercial development in an area that frankly hadn't seen any redevelopment for quite some time. So we felt that trying to leverage the residential with a commercial zoning classification would get some movement in that area, and it did in part. The other aspect of it was that what if the residential component fails in some respect? What happens if we get something which is half-built? And in the case of the former Center Street School building, there was a big question mark as to whether or not the proposed residential units immediately adjacent to 615 would even find a market. I mean, it was really close. And if you're not familiar with 615 traffic, it gets semis going down there, and you should probably hold on sometimes. It really moves. You can feel it. And so that we felt was something that may cause there not to be a market demand that close to 615. That actually is exactly what happened. And so the units that were in the old Center Street building that were proposed originally for residentials were then converted to commercial use, which is allowed by the district with the Planning Commission's approval. And so when we look at that structure in terms of historic preservation and its resiliency for a variety of different uses, it was really a complete success from a zoning perspective. I understand that financially the project ran into some difficulties, but nonetheless, we're looking at a structure which is fully occupied and now occupies 3 different businesses immediately adjacent to residences. And so, again, it functioned exactly the way the Old Village District intended it to function in terms of its adaptability. And so what we'd be looking for in a formal proposal here is that what if. What if, in fact, there's an issue and there's difficulty with the marketability, the livability of the units immediately adjacent to 615. How could they be readily adapted to an office use, for example? And so we're looking for that in the formal submission as well. A few other things that they'll need to keep in mind, pursuant to this district regulations, all elevations will have to receive uniform architectural treatment. So they can't turn their back on anything, and particularly the well, all of them, basically. The side elevations facing 615 would need a lot more architectural treatment. Granted, it's the side of the building, but it also needs to enhance the public space of that corridor. Likewise with those rear elevations as well, they need more additional, they'll have to have additional architectural treatment on theirs. And obviously, we've got single-family, some 1- and some 2-story residences immediately to the west now on the Presley Avenue extension. And so if you're talking about a 3-story structure in their backyards, their view amenity is going to be directly impacted. And so the architectural treatment on the rear of the the north-south oriented structure is going to be something that the Planning Commission would have to take a very, very close look at as well. So, so those are some of the challenges moving forward. Again, it may be a great project, but there needs to be some harmonizing with the old village regulations. If the Planning Commission, I know most of you probably knew, I actually, if you're interested, I don't want to take up all your time tonight. I can show you what the district regulations were written to produce, if that would help inform the discussion a little bit. But I'm a little reluctant to do that because, again, we're not married to any particular thing. It's not like it's this or nothing, and there's no room for creativity or anything like that. But if you're interested to know what we were looking at when we drafted the district regulations, I can actually show you what was supposed to go here on this parcel. And maybe that'll give you some ideas moving forward as to how this can evolve into something that can get on the ballot. It's up to you, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we would like to see those definitely before we sit down and start reviewing any final site plans. I think that will help.
Oh, I have it here tonight if you'd like to take a look at it. But again, I don't want to have the meeting extend out until midnight or whatever.
No, I think we'll hold off.
Okay.
And we'd like to see those definitely at some point before this comes back to us for discussion. I'd like the commission members to comment. I wanted to remind you, this is an informal discussion. There will be no vote tonight. And I would recommend that you read the code, especially 1153, and that's very important to OV. Take in all of Mr. Zeman's comments. That was an excellent history on where this started and what it's become, and what happened in between. He'll share with us this material that he has. And so at this point, gentlemen, any further questions?
And
Mr. Barton.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a few things, and this is informal, so they'll just be observations. And coming off of some of the requirements that the building be considered in the round, so that the areas would be the elevations with the garage doors. I think you can assume that we're going to want to see the brick come up in the back as much as it is around the rest of the building. I mean, and also maybe where you have your the balconies, that you use that as an opportunity to create some interest in the way you detail the opening, similar as you did with the elevations above the doors on the other side of the building. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying there's an opportunity there to get some more interest in that, being that you actually see those elevations when you come up and down Center Street. The thing you'll see first with this project is the garage door elevations first. So we would like to, I think I can speak kind of generally that we're looking for more there. There was, and also the fact that the school is 100% brick. The commercial building to your north is 100% brick. So I don't have a problem with the amount of non-brick that you show on the interior elevations, but I think we want to see more brick on the backside. There's also a question about, just from observing this, and you may not have this resolved yet, these stair towers as they come up through the roof. Right now, you're just showing them as a big gray blob, and obviously that would have to be treated architecturally as much or as thoughtfully as the rest of the building. I noticed that in the plan of the roof, the stairs don't go to the outside wall, but on the three-dimensional, it goes all the way almost to the front. So obviously something else is going on there. You need to take consideration. If it's mechanical or something, you want to be careful about how you treat that.
Yeah, just to introduce, I'm Gabriel with HSB Architects, 1250 Old River Road, Suite 201, Cleveland, Ohio. The rooftop patios were a late add, and so we wanted to at least allude to them in the elevations. Sure. The floor plans we have been kind of reworking to account for that. But yes, we do agree that those will be developed further with the architectural.
I mean, and I wouldn't mind seeing, like, some kind of trellises or other things to really develop that roof condition. The only other thing I see that's worth, I think, talking about, and that came up about the amount of permeable surface you have, is that the area in the parking area right now, you're just showing as a large ocean of pavement. The fact is that you could create some planting islands between the garage doors, extending them out.
Correct.
Even the opportunity of putting a tree or something that would significantly soften that elevation without effectively, affecting the operation of the access to the parking. And, and to even at the perimeter, to see some vegetation.
Yeah, I agree. I believe the intent was also eventually along Center Street to have a similar type of landscape
Yeah.
barrier, even a partial fence. I think
Right.
the Erie Bank next to it has a small brick piers with intermediate fencing between. So
And-
picking up on that aesthetic, I think would be.
And I understand that, the site has constraints. These buildings are pretty close to one another. I mean, that's really your problem. It's not my problem so much, is that, to be able to rent those for people to feel comfortable. If there's any way those can be maybe pulled apart a little bit.
Mhm.
But I understand the constraints that you're dealing with. But I think the landscaping on the backside, the garage side, would be welcome by everyone, including, I'm sure, the tenants.
Agreed.
So, that's all I have.
Any further comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Perkovic.
I'd just like to echo Mr. Varga's statement that your north and southbound traffic on 615, that's really going to be your first view, is that according to the rear elevation. So I think even to the lessening, if you will, of the courtyard in the middle, to maybe get some more of a landscape buffer from your drive aisles to the, essentially the garage doors, that really would help the overall project.
Agreed. And one thing to speak to that too, the intent was to utilize the existing curb cuts that are currently in place along Center Street. We potentially looked at having this building essentially flip, so as you're coming down Center Street, you would actually be seeing the primary facade, but then it would be a matter of adding an additional curb cut and losing some of this common area courtyard space. We agreed developing this facade a bit further so it's more presentable, doing architectural studies to present the proper material will definitely need to be taken, since those are, relatively prominent facades. And as you suggested, maybe that, I agree, this could shift slightly to, beef up this vegetation area, tree lawn that's in between here. So, and even on this other side, in additional discussions, we were talking, this may actually become a one-way, so this may thin up and again allow for those opportunities for additional landscape.
Yeah, I wouldn't let the curb cuts dictate other things, I mean, I understand the need to try to work with existing conditions, but the curb cuts are not going to be the driving force to create the environment that you want. I like the green space in the middle. I think that's a good idea.
Right. The traffic, the flow of traffic is a decent consideration here, knowing that along Center Street, we want to limit this. It seems for only right-hand turns to come across here. So knowing how people flow through the site and get on and off with the one-way, we are trying to consider some of those factors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Mr. Zeman, this information that you would be providing to the commission to help prepare us before any final reviews that'll take place here, is it permissible to provide that information to the applicant?
Oh yeah, those are public records. Those
Good,
are all
good.
those are all from the city's records.
Good, that's good.
The original proposals were, ground floor commercial, upper floor, residential component. That's probably hard to, with the townhouse, floor plans they're proposing here. Again, what we would be looking for is the ability, certainly with the units closer to 615, how they could be, again, readily adapted to a commercial use. And again, we're not looking at a high-intensity use. It would probably be offices with, limited, if any, outside customers coming in, and maybe very few employees. But what we saw, for example, over at the Center Street School building is you can actually fit a heck of a lot of activity in a relatively small space, between the podiatry office on the ground floor and the salon lofts on the upper level, and there's also, of course, a law office there as well. You can do quite a lot in a relatively small amount of square footage relative to commercial use, and so we again, the project can't move forward unless we can address that commercial aspect of it.
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, we're kind of winding down here, but because the building is quite modular, it's the same unit, eight and fours. Had there been any thought about taking the two units on each side that's adjacent to 615 and making those office uses instead of residential?
Two that are closest to 615, just make those commercial.
making this an office and an office with a common wall and keeping the residential. I mean, did anyone think about that as a
No,
possibility?
as the discussion was proceeding, I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that parking is.
That's the issue, right?
Because I'm actually the landlord of the salon lofts and the Foot Doctor, and parking is very tight.
But I just threw that out. With this scheme, office might present itself differently than it did with the other scheme where it was first floor, maybe the end units are offices.
Maybe the
or
entire
something.
units.
I mean, I'm just saying, yeah,
Yeah.
that you get the combination that way without really changing the scheme of the building at all, you know. But you're
well-
right, parking becomes the issue.
There were reciprocal easements with the bank lot, and I know there's a proposal for an expansion of the bank lots onto the rear parcel. So there may be better opportunity here than with the Center Street School building to pick up some additional shared use parking, which really is also a hallmark of the district. But again, it needs to have that resiliency. Otherwise, moving forward, can be difficult.
So to try to minimize, understanding that 615 does get busy traffic-wise, and you have trucks and the noise. And this was a suggestion from the architects, minimize the exposure to 615.
Right.
So,
No, I understand.
yeah.
But if those were offices, you'd almost mitigate the problem completely because then you wouldn't have
Yeah.
residences there.
Okay, gentlemen, you have a lot to reconsider now.
Yeah.
A lot of information was provided tonight, especially by Mr. Zeman. You heard the comments and concerns of Mr. Varga and Mr. Perkovic. I'd recommend you look over this material that Mr. Zeman will present to you as he will be presenting it to us. You may want to rewatch this session on Mentor Public Television just to recapture something we may have missed because a lot of information was given. And I know you'll be having discussions with the administration. So when the time is appropriate, we look forward to seeing you come back, and we wish you good luck. Thank you.
We appreciate the time.
Thank you. Before we get to the director's report, just for clarification, the motion on the Lowe's home improvement outside storage was to remove it from the table and to dismiss it without prejudice, just so we're all clear on that. Okay. Ms. Mitchell, anything from the director's report?
No, I did receive one comment from one of the planning commission members with regard to bed and breakfasts and the hotels. I think we still would like to internally explore that a little bit more, and I know Mr. Snow indicated to me that he'd like all the members present when you do consider it. I know you have one planning commission member not at the next meeting, so we'll continue to tweak that and then present it to you, hopefully so then you can schedule a hearing in June.
Would you like to set a deadline on receipt of comments from the commission so that you can go past that point?
Certainly, we'll continue to accept any additional comments if you have them, or even just a phone call, if that's easier. Sometimes that's just easier to have a dialogue rather than put all your thoughts into an email. We can do that as well.
All right, so there's no reason to set a deadline?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's it? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Good night, thank you.